Grab a pint, grab your lineup. We're about to tap into fantasy. Welcome back to Tap Into Fantasy, the podcast with a professional fantasy mind and an amateur beer palate. I'm Lance Gandy. You can find me on X at LG_fantasy. It's officially bye week hell, y'all. 6 teams on bye. You might be starting players you've barely even heard of. It's okay. That's why I'm here. We're going to get through this difficult time together. First, I'll be giving my thoughts on an Odyssey Beerwerks Fluffy Pumpkin, because nothing says seasonal depression like spiced ale in October. Then we'll head to the Thursday night game. Well, I'll let you know the startable players and the ones just stealing oxygen. I'll dig up the fantasy graveyard after that and give my rest of season take on 3 underperforming players and end with some love 'em or leave 'em for the Week 8 slate. First, let's honor the fantasy gods with a toast. May the best drafts of your past be the worst of your future. Let's tap in. Okay, so like I said, I'll be trying the Odyssey Beerwerks Fluffy Pumpkin Toasted Marshmallow Porter. So pumpkin beers can be really hit or miss, but the brewery says it also has hints of seasonal spices, vanilla, and marshmallow. A lot of the reviews I saw on Untappd were from the Great American Beer Festival in Colorado earlier this month. So I did what any reasonable person would do and went down a rabbit hole of checking out the festival and what all it entails, and oh my god, this looks like beer heaven and I want to drown in it. They have every beer imaginable, a section called Paired, where they take beer and pair it with famous chefs' dishes, a costume contest, top spirits from around the country, a lip-syncing contest, and obviously the biggest beer competition in the US. It looks like where I'm now going to go in my head when I think about my happy place. At some point, I'm going to go dressed as a Ninja Turtle, Michelangelo, obviously, and join the lip-syncing competition while carrying 4 beers at one time. Okay, enough about the festival. That isn't for another year, sadly. Let's check in with the Untappd judges, who think they're at the Great American Beer Festival, armed with nothing but a cracked phone screen and a superiority complex. Welcome to the Scrolls of the Booze Realm. Okay, this first review isn't really a review, it's more of an observation. So I was going through all of the reviews of this Fluffy Pumpkin Toasted Marshmallow Porter, and there was a guy who reviewed it 6 times in a row in one day. Like, he didn't even write anything. He just gave it 4.5 stars every time. And then, why not? 2 days later, he gives the same exact review. 2 weeks after that, same review. And then he did it another 5 times over the next month. The exact same review. Like, how does that help anybody with this beer? How does that help himself? Is he a QA tester for this company, trying to see if there's a bad batch? Does he work for this company, just trying to artificially up the rating? Is he going full dad mode and can't figure out the first review went through, so he just keeps hammering the send button like it's the elevator? Is he one of those white guys at parties that like to rattle off the exact drinks they had that night? Like, oh yeah, I had 3 Miller Lights, dude, but then we had a shot of SoCo. I had 2 whiskey Sprites. Wait, no, I had 1 whiskey Sprite, then 1 whiskey Coke. I switched it up, and then another SoCo shot, and I was so gone, bro. It's always a white guy, isn't it? All right, let's toast to you, this beer's biggest fan. All right, well, I'll give you another gem of a review later on in the episode that you shouldn't miss. Before we move on, like and subscribe. Or, don't. I'll just assume you're the guy still starting Tyler Lockett in your flex. All right, it's time to do my only review of this beer. This is the opening draft, where I taste beers like a pro, talk nonsense about flavors nobody can actually verify, and judge harder than your fantasy league commissioner on trade day. If you've got a beer that makes you proud, suspicious or just mildly concerned for humanity, email it to tappintofantasy@gmail.com. It might earn a poor score, a permanent spot on the big beer board, or at least a good story to tell at parties that you're not invited to. Okay, well, let's get our fluffy pumpkin on. So I have my raw blonde beer glass I got from the brewery in Fort Worth to pour this in. All right, I'm pouring pretty slowly, and there's still a good amount of head. Pretty pour though. It was a pretty pour. I'm gonna give myself flowers for that one. This thing smells fantastic, by the way. I want to bathe in this stuff already. Hmm. So it's a smorgasbord of pumpkin, marshmallow, and s'mores when you first drink it, and then it all disappears in like 2 milliseconds. It's a strange disappearing act, like the Lamar Jackson in the playoffs of beers. So it had so much potential. I'm still not ruling out bathing in it, but so far a little underwhelming actually drinking it. All right, I'll keep sipping this fluffiness and give you my pour score at the end. Okay, let's talk about some players who have been pooping in their pants lately and how I see it going for the rest of the season. You can find my full rankings every week at tappintofantasy.com. I have week 8 rankings up in all scoring types, and I update them regularly before kickoff. So grab your shovels. It's time to dig some burial pits. Welcome to the fantasy graveyard.
Enter the fantasy graveyard, where dreams go to die.
CJ Stroud owners, I feel your pain. Just kidding, I don't. I didn't draft him anywhere, so I'm just laughing at you. In all seriousness, he's only had one startable game this whole season. That was against the Ravens, a team that can't pressure the QB at all. They have a total of 8 sacks on the season, tied for the last in the league. That's a recurring theme with this Texans offense. If the defense they're playing can rush the passer, Stroud is gonna eat butthole that week. It's basically that simple. Like the Rams have the second most sacks in the league. He put up a nasty 9.7 points. Seattle is third in sacks. He put up an unusable 14.7 points. Against Jacksonville, 12th in pressure rate, 12.7 points. Then he put up 18.4 against the Titans, who had the 7th worst pressure rate, and that 28.8 game against the Ravens. This offensive line is one of the worst in the league, and they can't run the ball. So to figure out if he's startable or not, just look at the defensive pressure rate and sack percentage. Stroud has been going through the ringer for going on 2 years now, so he's starting to fall into bad habits when he knows Will Anderson Jr. or Jared Verse are about to break him in half. He's obviously not playable in 1 QB leagues pretty much ever, but he's basically a 2 QB league streamer against bad defenses. Like, he should be playable against San Francisco in week 8. They have the worst pressure rate in the league. So Alvin Kamara has looked cooked this year. He's on a bottom 6 offense with an injured offensive line and just doesn't have the burst he used to. Like, there's a stat I really like that listeners who are subscribed have heard me talk about a lot before. Rushing yards over expected per attempt. It's basically an attempt to isolate just how well the running back does on every rush. In last with negative 1.26 is Travion Henderson, but that's a story for another day. Second to last with negative 0.76 is Alvin Kamara. What made him special in fantasy was his passing game usage in the past, but that's just fallen off a cliff. Like, he used to see upwards of a 20% target share with 8, 9, even 10 yards per reception. He's at a career low 13.1% target share with 4.9 yards per reception. He had an 84% snap share against a mid-Chicago D in Week 7. He put up 2.9 points. Like, this is just going downhill in a hurry. Your only hope is that he gets traded to a contender and actually wants to play for them. I'd sell low at this point with a tough schedule coming up. It's not going to get any better. So Xavier Worthy took a backseat this week to Rashee Rice. Rice is going to be the top target earner on the team. He had 10 targets, 2 touchdowns, had a third one called back because of a penalty, and he only played 41% of snaps. This offense is now fully operational with him back, and they could go nuclear from here. Worthy will still be startable every week, but it's going to be very boom bust. Like, they just have too many skill position players to feed now, with Rice, Worthy, Brown, Thornton, Smith Schuster, Kelsey, Pacheco, Hunt, and rookie Brashard Smith. Like, the only player with guaranteed 7+ targets going forward is Rice, and everybody else will be fighting for the scraps left over. Like, I view Worthy on the wide receiver 2-3 borderline rest of season. Playable, but probably a disappointment from where you originally drafted him. So let's move on to the Thursday night fantasy breakdown. It's the Vikings going to Los Angeles to face the Chargers. The last 3 Thursday night games have been strange, with the heavy favorite losing all 3. Let's see what we can dig out of this one.
Thursday night fantasy breakdown. Every week, every player. Let's tap in.
Okay, we'll start with the Vikings. It looks like another fun Carson Wentz week against a Chargers defense that should have a healthier Khalil Mack and could have Elijah Molden back. This is a standoff between 2 units struggling, though. Like, the Chargers have been gashed by running backs, tied for 29th in EPA against the run. They've been average against the pass, but getting Mack going and Molden back could definitely help. Christian Darrisaw, the Vikings left tackle, didn't practice randomly Wednesday. Like, if he doesn't go, this could be a really long day for Wentz. I'd be hesitant to play him in 2 QB leagues. I would definitely look elsewhere if Darrisaw doesn't play. Like I said, the Chargers have been gashed on the ground, but the Vikings are just 26th in EPA per rush on offense. Jordan Mason still looks good. He ranks 12th in rushing yards over expected per attempt. They've just been in trailing game scripts, so they're 28th in total rushing yards. That sort of takes him out of the game. Like, he hasn't even had a target in the last 2 games. If it's a close game or the Vikings are ahead, Mason should have a good game. But if they fall behind early, he may not see enough touches to get there. He's a boom-bust RB2 this week. So Justin Jefferson is obviously an every week starter, no matter who's at QB. He's averaging basically the same amount of yards per game and yards per route run as last year. He's just been unlucky in the touchdown department. Still, there's nobody on this Chargers team that can cover him, and he's had 10 or more targets in 3 straight games. Like, he's a must start. But with so many bye weeks, Jordan Addison is a mid to low end wide receiver 2 this week, so you're probably playing him. Like, he had a monstrous 12 target, 128 yard game last week, and has had 114 yards or more in 2 of his 3 games this year. The Vikings are 3.5 point dogs, so he could see another big game if they're down early. TJ Hawkinson. Like, even with these bye weeks, he's still off the fantasy radar. He's currently tied in 23 in points per game with 6.4. I mean, he's still getting a decent target share. He was at 18% last year. He's at 17% this year. He just hasn't been explosive, and they're using him as a check down with Aaron Jones out. So in previous years, he would hover around 10 to 11 yards per reception, and he's now at 7.8, the lowest of his career. He's just a mid to low tight end 2, and should only be started in super deep leagues. Okay, let's talk about these Chargers. So Justin Herbert should be getting his big guy Joe Alt-Delete back, and could even get Trey Pipkins too. Like, that would be huge. It's been a nasty watch the last few weeks. The Chargers can't run the ball very well. The offensive line is playing randos, and their defense has been a turnstile lately. So it's all been on Herbert's very broad shoulders. He leads the league in passing yards because of all of this. They may be able to find a little balance with the offensive line getting healthier, but the Vikings always make it difficult on the passing game. They give up the 5th least points to QBs, even after getting torched by Jalen Hurts last week. So he's a low-end QB1 in this one. So Kamani Vidal flat out busted last week. I'm not trying to toot my own horn. Well, yes, I am. I called him out last week as a bust. This week, he should get a little more room to run with a healthier offensive line and a Vikings team that dares you to rush the ball. Like, a positive is that he saw 90% of the run share and had 5 targets. If they get both Alt and Pipkins back, they could lean more on the run this game. Vidal is a borderline RB2 that you may have to play in Hell Week. The Chargers have 3 wide receivers that basically cannibalize each other every game in Keenan Allen, Quentin Johnston, and Ladd McConkey. Johnston is 9th in points per game, Allen is 13th, and McConkey is 35th. Either of the 3 could be the leading receiver in any game, although all of them are wide receiver 2s this week, and you really won't ever be sure which one will go off. Allen has the highest target share, and him and Johnston receive the most end zone targets. Johnston's only had a 12% target share the last 2 weeks when he's been healthy, so I'll be ranking him the lowest, but he's still startable as a low-end wide receiver too. Allen and McConkey are pretty much must-starts in Hell Week as kind of mid wide receiver 2s. So there's now a tight end on this team that muddies the waters in this group in Odyssey Gadsden. He's been a revelation as his snaps have gone up in every game since his debut in Week 2, up to 79% last week. So he now owns the highest PFF receiving grade among all rookies, including receivers. Check out this image from @the_oddsmaker. It shows the highest yards per route run against zone coverage in the league. Odyssey Gadsden is 4th among all players, including receivers, and the Vikings play zone at the 3rd highest rate in the league. Gadsden could easily eat again this week. He's a must-start. Alright, we're going to get into the love 'em or leave 'em next, but first, a quick break. This episode is powered by Dubby Energy. It's my go-to for a clean boost with 0 crash and 0 jitters, whether I'm grinding out drafts or just need that mid-afternoon push. No junk, no guilt, just focus. Hit the link in the description and use promo code TAPINTOFANTASY for 10% off. Dubby brings the energy. You bring the winning picks. Okay, now let's talk about the players I'm hyping up and fading for the Week 8 slate. I'm going to be giving you 2 players that should boom and 2 players that should bust for every position, except 1 each for tight end for the Sunday and Monday games. This is love 'em or leave 'em.
It's love 'em or leave 'em, darling. Your fantasy lineup just got a little sexier.
Okay, let's kick things off at quarterback with Caleb Williams. He's been very up and down this year and didn't have to do much with the running game taking things over last week against New Orleans. His kryptonite this year, just like his rookie year, has been when he gets pressured. Last year he was 34th in EPA while under pressure at negative 0.41. This year it's gotten a little better, but he's still 24th at negative 0.32 per play. His completion percentage in these situations is 35th at 39.6%. However, when he's shown a blitz look, his EPA per play is 8th in the league, with 7 touchdowns and no interceptions. He also just struggles against zone at 22nd in EPA per play, while he's all the way up at 5th against man. So to put it simply, he struggles when pressured and against zone coverage, but loves teams that play man coverage and blitz. The Ravens defense plays the 4th most man coverage in the league, and they blitz the 11th most, but are 3rd worst in pressure rate. They play right into his hands, and he should be able to rip them apart. They've also just been butt in general. They're 3rd worst in EPA overall. Like, play Caleb this week, and be happy. So it's a terrible week for streamers with bye weeks and injuries, but I think you could get away with streaming Joe Flacco this week. He looked really good against the Steelers last week, just getting the ball out super quick, mitigating the pressure, just peppering his best player, Jamar Chase, with like 1 million targets. The one thing that old statue Flacco doesn't like is pressure. He doesn't have to worry about that this week, though, because the Jets are 4th worst in pressure rate. They're also 4th worst against the pass in general, and Sauce Gardner is currently out from a concussion. Like, even if Gardner does miraculously make it back and somewhat slows down Jamar Chase, Brandon Stevens on the other side has been a gift to QBs every week. Like, he has no shot against T. Higgins. This looks like another big game for Sir Joseph of Lancashire. On to Week 6 QB busts. So Aaron Rodgers has done relatively well so far for where he was drafted. He's at 15th in points per game and is tied for 4th in passing touchdowns with 14. There's definitely some regression coming here. They've only had 3 rushing touchdowns. Like, they're at negative 1.2 pass rate over expected, which is basically an average rate of throwing the ball. He's also at a 6.38 average depth of target. So he's just been relying on a bunch of yak to score these touchdowns. At some point, he'll be getting many of his touchdowns sniped by Jalen Warren or Kenneth Gainwell. Like, the only 2 games he's had in the top 15 scorers on the week was against the Bengals and the Jets, 2 of the worst defenses in the league that can't get pressure on the QB. When he gets pressured heavily, he can't do anything with his 74-year-old legs. Like in week 2 against the Seahawks when he scored 12.4 fantasy points. Micah Parsons in Green Bay this week could do the same thing to this old man. It might be elderly abuse, like Bill Belichick with his 17-year-old girlfriend who runs his life. Alright, one more bust QB for the week, Dak Prescott. So this one's tough, and I normally wouldn't pick a guy on a heater that's as talented as Dak, but it's bye week hell, and he's the only one that really makes sense here. I'm not going to tell you that Spencer Rattler or Mac Jones against Houston are going to bust. That's just too obvious. So like I said, Dak is going against an elite Broncos defense with a number 1 corner in Pat Surtain that can clamp down on CeeDee Lamb or George Pickens. I know Dak's been dealing, but the only defenses he's played that are in the top 15 are Philly and Chicago. He only scored 7.8 points against Philly without Jalen Carter, and 14 against Chicago, who was banged up and not very good yet in week 3. He's taken advantage of some bad defenses and had the benefit of a great running game. This Denver defense is great against both, and I expect him to clean up the couple of busted coverages they had last game. I still have him in my top 12, but don't be surprised to see Dak disappoint you this week. Alright, let's move on to some running back booms, starting with Rico Dowdle. Dude just woke up before week 5 and decided to dominate. Like with Chuba Hubbard back, he had a reduced role, but Dowdle showed he was much more efficient with 96 yards on 18 touches. So they'll both be very involved, but I expect Dowdle to lead the way in touches with a sort of 55-45 or 60-40 split. He's now 3rd in the NFL behind Javonte Williams and David Montgomery in rushing yards over expected per attempt at 1.19. He's also a healthy 2.6 yards after contact per attempt, while Chuba is at 2.0. So check out this graphic from @Doug_analytics. It shows the success rates of each running back by run location and overall through week 6. Dowdle is 3rd at 51.9% overall, and Chuba is actually at 6th at 49.1%. So this team can run block with the best of them, and he gets the slow linebackers of the Bills this week, who have allowed the 5th most points to backs and are 30th in EPA. Keep rolling with Rico. He's not going to disappoint. So this whole Jets team is in shambles at 0-7, but Breece Hall has quietly been pretty impressive this year. He tops the NFL in explosive percentage, which is rushing plays that were in the top 10 percentile of yards gained. It's technical. Just know he's rushed for long gains consistently. So check out this image from @StartSidhamFF. It just shows that Hall is tied for the 2nd most explosive plays, but has less carries than the 2 others above him. He's still an explosive player, but the coaches haven't given him the goal line, so he has 0 touchdowns on the year. He's had 1 goal line carry and was stuffed, and has just 1 reception total in the red zone. I don't think that'll matter as much against the Cincinnati defense that's 3rd worst in running plays over 20 yards and 26th in overall EPA against the run. This offense should be better in general with Tyrod Taylor in at QB, and Braylon Allen can't steal any more work in the red zone. I actually think they could give Brees most of the work down there now. So he should run wild against the Bengals. There's also rumors of him being traded, so he's an easy buy low right now before he scores 25 this week. Those guys make me feel good about fantasy football again. That high is short-lived, however, because these next ones make me want to throw my laptop into a pumpkin patch. Let's begin with Alvin Kamara. Yes, I have already talked about him, but there's not a lot of options this week that could truly be bad with 6 teams on bye. So I've told you how unexplosive he's looked all year, and his role is diminishing. He's going up against the Bucks, who are top 12 in EPA against the run. I know they just let Jahmyr Gibbs run wild on them, but Kamara at this point isn't in the same zip code of burst as Gibbs. The Bucks have allowed the most receiving yards to backs, but that hasn't mattered at all in his case this year. He also faced the Seahawks, who were 30th. He had 1 catch for 14 yards. I know it's tough not starting him in Hell Week, but I feel like you can find a couple better players in your team to keep him on your bench. Ramondre Stevenson has actually gone 2 whole games without fumbling. That means he's due for 1 or 2 coming up soon. In all seriousness, he was really good last game against the Titans defense that makes most players look good. He had a usage spike of 75% of snaps and was RB13 on the week. He now gets 4 above average to tough run defenses starting this week with the Browns. They are number 1 in EPA against the run and allow the second least points to the position. Like, he hasn't been anything special on the ground this year. He's 25th in rushing yards over expected per attempt and 31st in explosive percentage. He's a sell-high candidate after his usable game last week. The Patriots could start using rookie Travion Henderson more at any time in the coming weeks. If you're still listening, congratulations, you get a gold star. Now it's your turn to give me a gold star. 5 of them in the review section. If you'd like your gold star, just send me your address and I'll gladly ship it to you. I just require $4.95 for shipping and handling. Alright, time to crack open another scroll from the booze realm. Here is a 3.5-star review from California. Delayed check-in from late last night, early AM, and technically my first beer as a 50-year-old. Paired with Wallace and Gromit, Vengeance Most Foul, as I get a jump start on the Oscar nominees. Looks like a thin field in the animated category this year. Nothing pairs with a pumpkin stout better than Wallace and Gromit. I mean, forget pretzels or steak. This man's out here pairing his beer with stop-motion claymation. So I checked out the rest of his profile, and 98% of his check-ins are with movies. Like, his last one is paired with a movie from 1932, which he claims is the number 1 movie from that year, but only number 6 of 9 for decades, whatever that means. Like, bro, you're not submitting this to the Academy. You're on Untappd. Nobody's scrolling your profile thinking, wow, what a thoughtful pairing for a seasonal porter. I'm starting to think he's less of a beer drinker and more of a Criterion collection that learned to burp. Like, this man probably sniffs his beer and says, I'm getting notes of an aerial shot and a strong sense of post-war melancholy. Honestly, I respect the dedication, but when your beer check-in looks like it belongs on Letterboxd, maybe it's time to pick a lane. Okay, let's forge on ahead to the receivers I'm betting on in Week 8. It's been a roller coaster ride for T. Higgins this year, but he had his best game of the season with Joe Flacco last week and finished at wide receiver 12. He has another soft matchup this week, even with the Jets D looking a little better the last couple of weeks. I had Joe Flacco as a nice start this week earlier, and so it makes sense to have Higgins as a solid play. It doesn't make much of a difference if Sauce Gardner plays or not, because he would mostly shadow Jamar Chase. The wide receiver 2 on teams against the Jets have just been lighting things up. Like, think Ryan Flournoy of the Cowboys a few weeks ago, or Xavier Legette finally showed some life last week. Higgins should blow up this week. Keep plugging him in. So there are some teams that have just a ridiculous amount of people injured and on bye, and they just need a rando flyer this week at wide receiver. I got you, fam. Sorry, I'm never going to say that again. Darnell Mooney could be a pickup off of waivers and put directly in your lineup kind of guy this week. He's still a distant fourth option in the air for this team behind London, Pitts, and Bijan, but he's the deep threat on the team and paced them in yards coming off another injury last week. I expect the Dolphins to lean more into man coverage this game. They run it the 11th most in the NFL, and Penix has struggled in those looks. He's 32nd of 33 qualified QBs against man with negative .25 EPA per play. Darnell Mooney's target share, over 8% higher against man compared to zone. Look for some deep shots this week to Mooney. If they're completed, he should have a really nice week. So it's looking like Terry McLaurin is on track to be back this weekend for the Commanders against the Chiefs. You may be thinking to yourself, finally, it's time to throw McLaurin back into my lineup. But don't do it. It's a trap. He was healthy for almost 3 full games to start the year, and he never even hit 9 fantasy points. He's now been out 4 straight games with a soft tissue injury. Never a great bet to be 100% coming off of those. Deebo Samuel is expected to be back as well to steal targets, and Marcus Mariota is starting at QB. They're projected for just 18 points Monday night against a surging Chiefs defense. The Chiefs are 6th in EPA against the pass and allow the 6th least points to receivers. Don't fall for the McLaurin trap. So Kayshon Boutte has been up and down this year, but has 3 touchdowns in the last 2 weeks and has caught every ball he's been thrown the last 3 weeks, 10 for 10. However, needs to catch everything to stay relevant because for the season he just has a 12.7% target share. He's just run super hot on touchdowns and catch rate in general at 80%. What's even scarier is that against man coverage he has a 5% target share. That is beyond unplayable. Stephon Diggs, however, has a 30% target share against man. He's their go-to dude in those looks. They're playing the Browns this week, who have a top 5 defense in general, but also play the most man coverage in the NFL by a wide margin. This smells like a lower scoring game with Steph Diggs as the main target. Keep your booty on your bench. Alright, I only do one boom tight end every week because the position is stupid. So I've shouted this guy out a ton on this show, but Mason Taylor is a top 10 option this week if Tyrod Taylor is able to go at QB. Fields was very limiting to Taylor's upside, but Tyrod Taylor could unlock him. Or at least, turn the key a little bit. The offense was able to run more plays with Taylor because he's just more decisive. He doesn't take as many sacks. That just means more targets for Taylor. Also, Garrett Wilson is trending towards being out again for this one, and the Bengals have given up the most points to the position in the NFL. He's a strong play this week, even in DFS. So Zach Ertz is one I'm staying away from this week for many of the reasons I pointed out with Terry McLaurin. They're only projected 18 points with Mariota at QB, and they're at Kansas City in a nasty environment for away teams. The Chiefs give up the 3rd least points to the position, and it also looks like McLaurin and Deebo are back for this one. Ertz is outside the top 12 tight ends, even in Hell Week. Okay, so I hope you got something useful out of this Love 'em or Leave 'em Week 8 breakdown. I'll do one more sip of this fluffy pumpkin toasted marshmallow porter and make my conclusion. Okay, so I think this goes 14th on the big beer board, right in front of the Ziviet's Porter. It smells amazing, and the first half a second of tasting it, you really get the toasted marshmallow and s'mores flavor with a little sweetness, but it all goes away in 2 milliseconds flat. So final pour score for this marshmallow mashup is the Great Marshmallow Catfish. It looks and smells like dessert heaven, but once you take a sip, it's where'd you go? But that's going to do it for this episode of Tap Into Fantasy. If you liked what you heard, make sure to like and subscribe. It helps the show find other degenerates like you. Hit me up on X at LG_fantasy or email at tapintofantasy@gmail.com with any start-sit questions you have. Thanks for tapping in, and until next time, happy pours, happy scores.